Now, unfortunately, the concept of theosis has been largely lost in America and American Protestantism, where it's more of the view that we're basically helpless and we're sinners and
Mhm.
that we're just going to be rescued through faith in a concept, faith in the blood atonement doctrine. But what do you think, Aaron? Do you think Eastern Orthodox are a bit closer to the truth with this doctrine of theosis, which is very ancient?
Oh, without a doubt. Yeah. I'm grateful for the Eastern Orthodox Church that it at least shows us that these archetypal, ancient, kind of pagan or Hellenistic models of Christianity that just kind of cut out all self responsibility from religion. It's like, hey, you're a just absolute shitbag. You're totally depraved. There is nothing you can do to be righteous. You literally, by virtue of being born, you deserve hell forever. It's such an insane thought system, isn't it? That the all-loving Lord of the universe would take a finite being that is absolutely not capable of doing anything that could possibly warrant eternal conscious torment, and then saying, yeah, that's the truth of you. That's who you really are. It's like, man, if that's not a Luciferian inversion of the truth, I don't know what is. So thankfully, Eastern Orthodoxy came along sometime not long after the Catholic Church. And people began to formulate new ideas and say, this whole like totally depraved philosophy of our religion doesn't really jive with the teachings of Jesus very well, especially things like John chapter 17, where Jesus prays that we would all be one just as he is one with God and one with him and one with the Father. And he bangs on about this oneness for all beings. So you're like, okay, so Jesus wanted us to experience the same oneness with God. That's his words in John. So there must be some way to do that. And Eastern Orthodox theologians came up with this idea of theosis, which is the gradual participation in the divine nature through expressing, living, embodying the virtues of the divine nature. So humility and righteousness and love and service to others and prayer, repentance, humility. So where I like to go with this, James, in terms of what is Christ consciousness, we can give you the simplest possible definition or a more complex metaphysical definition. And let's begin with the simplest one. When we say Christ consciousness, what we really mean, right, James, is WWJD.
Mm.
That's really it. It's like, can you be conscious of the Christ nature in you? That just as Jesus said, right, in multiple passages in the Synoptics, when you don't love the least of these, you don't love me. And when you do love the least of these, it's as if you did it unto me. And Jesus emphasizes this very strongly. So, right there, Jesus is emphasizing in the Gospels that the Christ is in all beings, the divine nature, the Ruach of God that was breathed into everyone. There is only one life force in the universe, and all beings that exist are animated by it. And so, Jesus held us to this standard, right? You must have the spiritual perception to feel, perceive, and know that the divine nature is in all beings. And so, you cannot say you love God and hate your neighbor. This is a contradiction, right? The Epistle of James says this. So to be Christ conscious is to ask that question, or more so, to have that question alive within you. In every moment, when you're faced with a challenge, when you're faced with a temptation, your heart cries out, what would Jesus do? What would Christ do? WWCD, maybe. And when you are in a state of consciousness or a state of awareness where that question has a lot of power in your mind. What would Jesus do? What would the Christ do? What would God have me do? That, my friends, is Christ consciousness. So we don't mean it's some magical state where you can read people's minds and walk through walls and stuff. Maybe some people believe that's what it is, but that's typically a straw man from Christianity, isn't it?
Totally. And I love thinking about Christ consciousness through the terms of what it's not. So we have the straw man that many Christians might use. Christ consciousness, they think they're God and they're better than everyone and they're exalted. Absolutely the opposite of that. I think
Yeah.
a foundation of this philosophy or this awareness in your mind is humility. It has to be. Jesus said if you exalt yourself, you're going to be humbled. So if you think you're better than anyone or you're judging anyone, you are not in Christ consciousness. You're not even close to it. So any new ager who's doing ayahuasca and has, their polyamorous relationships and they're exalting themselves as they got all the cool clothes on, I am the
Giant
Christ.
spiritual ego.
huge giant spiritual ego, and they're claiming Christ consciousness. They've got some work to do, because Christ consciousness is really about the awareness of the golden rule in your life and treating
Yeah.
others kindly and with charity and repenting. That's the opposite of this highly exalted New Ager claiming Christ consciousness. Don't you think, Aaron?
100%. Well, do you remember the debate we had in January with Wes Huff and Anton as the moderator? He sort of pre-scripted how he was going to try to hijack the debate and like get me on gotcha questions or whatever. He had like clips ready and stuff. And one of them was kind of out of nowhere. He was like, "Aaron, do you believe that you're God?"
Yeah.
And do you remember my response?
You said no.
Right. I said, absolutely not. Because I know what he means when he's asking me that
Mm-hmm.
question. Do you think you're God in the way that I think Jesus was God?
Right.
Do you think you're a pre-existent deity and all this stuff? It's a laughable definition. So it's like, of course I don't think I'm God. What a ridiculous question. How could a person be God? That's like asking a drop of water, are you the entire ocean? Do you believe you're the entire ocean? The drop is like, well, obviously not. I'm just a drop,
I'm
It's a
one with
silly
the
question.
ocean.
Yeah. So that's where oneness comes in, right? Christ consciousness is the awareness of perfect oneness, which means no individual entity can claim to be God. And so here's my problem, James, when Christians ask the question, or when they make the indictment of, oh, these New Age people talking about Christ consciousness, they all think they're God. And they mean that we literally think, like, I'm like Jesus, I'm like Yahweh walking around.
And could I add one thing real quick, Aaron?
Yeah,
Part of that is they think that we have the power, or we think we have the power to create the laws of the universe like a God would, right? But
sure.
really, this awareness of Christ consciousness is living in alignment with the laws that already exist. We're not creating any new laws. It's deep understanding of the golden rule, which is really the law that governs spiritually the universe.
The entire universe. Yep. So what I'm getting at here, James, is that they are presupposing a separate self. And so if you're going to attack anyone's beliefs or philosophy, you have to attack it on its own terms, on its own grounds, right? And so in our philosophy, our spiritual philosophy, we don't believe that separate selves exist. We don't believe in ontological separation. It's a proposition that literally can't be justified. If you say God is the ground of all being, via Paul Tillich and whatnot, you cannot then argue that it's possible to be separate from the ground of all being and still be. You can't say that it's possible to be ontologically, fundamentally, really separate from the source of all existence and yet still exist. Or else you have invented a second God. So you're essentially saying, it's funny, right? It's the actual inversion of what the Christian thinks. They look at someone who claims oneness with God and they say, you narcissistic bigot, you think you're, your own God? It's like, actually, you think that on a subconscious level. You think, in thinking you're separate from God, it's like, okay, you must be like your own power. Right? You exist on your own ontology, not God's. You share your being with yourself and not God because you're separate, right? It's totally unjustifiable. So the Christ consciousness is unity consciousness. It means to know all there is God, and everything is just an expression of God. And then the Antichrist would have to be the ego, the separate self. And I think this is really interesting, James. Mankind has this tendency, especially in religion, to project everything outside of itself, right? Mankind projects every spiritual reality outside of itself. We could look at the second coming of Christ, which we know is a metaphysical phrase that means the coming awareness of the Christ upon all the earth, the enlightened civilization. That's really the second coming, not an actual physical return from the skies. In the same way, the Christ nature gets what? Projected onto Yeshua the Nazarene. And only he's the Christ, no one else is. It's outside of us. The Christ is outside of me. I can only confess it. And then what do we do with the Antichrist? We say, that's outside of me. It's some evil guy who's going to appear in the last days. It's like, no, both the Christ and the Antichrist are within you. Both God and the devil, in one sense, are in your mind, meaning your mind can only conceptualize what God is. And then you worship and affirm your mental beliefs about God, which is what religion is. It's confess that you believe these propositions and you'll be saved. as if God cares what propositions you say you believe. God cares about the essence of the heart, right? The condition of your heart. And the only way to purify the condition of your heart is to practice daily living Christ consciousness. Every day, I strive to be a little bit more Christ like than yesterday. And no, this isn't me trying to earn salvation of my own merits, because again, you presuppose a separate self that I don't believe exists. I am not a separate self using my own personal strength and merits to earn my way to heaven. I am an expression of God. Aaron Abke is just an idea of God. I didn't invent myself. I didn't create myself in my mother's womb. I showed up in this body and I was told my name was Aaron Abke. I'm not this person. God is the only real being that exists. God is the I am that I am. And so, whatever can say, I am, whatever is the first person in the present tense, is the God principle. There's only one I am in the universe. So, if you can say I am, then that I am principle in you is the godly principle in you. And so, it's by that godly principle that I'm able to be more Christ like today than yesterday.
Mhm.
It is God's righteousness within me that allows me to be righteous. It is God that compels me to love and forgive, not my ego. So, no, I don't think I'm an ego that's earning my way to heaven. I'm trying to deny the ego, as Jesus said to do, and crucify it daily. And as I do that, as I crucify the Antichrist in me, the Christ in me is more and more able to shine forth. And isn't this what Jesus said over and over in so many different ways? You'll do even greater works than I will do. How can you argue that Jesus didn't have this philosophy in his mind?
And this is exactly how the first Christians, the Nazarenes and the Ebionites, understood it. We've studied this so in depth, and they
Absolutely.
believed that the purpose of life was to follow Christ as the way shower and to become Christ ourselves. So this isn't some heretical statement. This is the original form of Christianity.
Yep.